My name is Freddie Broom. I'm Director of Equity Inclusion for Georgia Municipal Association and Georgia City Solutions. And thank you for joining us for today's Embrace webinar. We're excited to have you here today. We have a great presentation today. Our topic today is improving the workplace by having courageous conversations. And we have a great speaker today. Our speaker today is William Tanks, who is currently the Executive Director of Public Services and Equity Inclusion at Powder Springs. Before joining Powder Springs, Bill Tanks had a great career with the Cobb County Fire Department, where he spent over 27 years with the Cobb County Fire Services. He has a great presentation today. I'm excited to hear it. I've seen it one time before when we attended one of our chief conferences, but today we're excited that he's able to bring it here to our Embrace program. So at this time, we will turn it over to today's speaker, Bill Tanks.
Thank you, Freddie. Let's see if I can get my share screen going. Got my boxes checked. And let's go. Let's get right into it. So we all good? You can still hear me? Everyone well? We're going to roll with it. Thank you, Freddie. I really appreciate what you're doing at GMA and the Embrace webinar. I think it's very valuable. I want to thank a few people before I jump right into it. I'm going to move through these slides at a good pace. But I have to thank the Courageous Conversation team, the folks that were at Cobb County Fire and Emergency Services that helped me put this here and get me here today. Also want to give a big shout out and thanks to Cobb County Library System. They've helped me with producing this webinar version, which was somewhat of a challenge. We're used to doing this in a 4-hour class. Also, I have to thank my city of Powder Springs, our Honorable Mayor Al Thurman, the Mayor Pro Tem Henry Luss, our council members, Mr. Borderline, Ms. Dawkins, Ms. Green, and Ms. Wisdom. And of course, our city manager who brought me over to City of Powder Springs, and our Powder Springs team. And that city manager is Pam Connor. And our Powder Springs team, all my colleagues who work over at the city. Let's talk about where we're going today. This is our map. At the end of this class, or at least this webinar, I want you all to have a blueprint for improving your workplace through courageous conversation. I'm going to talk about my personal experience. I'll talk some on our subject. Courageous conversation and improving the workplace. I'll talk about some core concepts, the organizational experience that I have with courageous conversations. Then we'll give you all, the webinar audience, the blueprint for improving your workplace. I'll summarize what we talked about, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. Practice this thing a couple of times. I'm right at 47 minutes. I think Freddie told me I need to keep it to 45. So let's see if we can stay on point today. And of course, at the end of this, since it is a 4-hour presentation, I doubt if I get to everything about our program, but I will have contact information at the end of our presentation. So where did this start for me? My personal experience goes back 40 years ago, actually. My first Unity experience was in the United States Navy boot camp. I come from a very diverse background, the city of Detroit. And when they put us in boot camp, you meet people from all over the country. I'll never forget, I met one young guy, a recruit. He was from somewhere in Dakota. And he told me he had never seen a black person in real life except for on TV. And I wondered why he kept staring at me, but we did, of course, start some courageous conversations and got to grow each other. What happens in the Navy is everyone that goes through boot camp, they have to watch this video. It's called the USS Forrestal Fire. And it teaches a very valuable lesson. In that fire, Navy lost 134 sailors on one ship. 20 planes were destroyed. Hundreds of sailors injured, dozens of planes damaged. It was the worst loss of life since World War II, and it improved damage control shipboard communications. What's really significant about that class is a Navy lesson, and that is we learn either to sail together or sink apart. They teach you that. You have to work together as a team. And what happens in boot camp is that they take, as I said, these diverse individuals and they form them into a unified team of United States Navy sailors. The subject is really about this, the same, achievement through teamwork, how do you build upon communication, commitment to a goal. None of these are really attainable by an individual, but this is nothing new. The subject that we're talking about today is really nothing new. As a matter of fact, subject itself is as ancient as the Tower of Babel. Now, if you hadn't heard the story of the Tower of Babel, it's about way back in ancient days when a united human race They spoke a single language, and they agreed to build a city up into the tower of the heavens. And then the power of the heavens confounded their language. And this disruption in their language disrupted their ability to achieve their unified goal, the Tower of Babel. But it is also as modern as current leadership practices. When you think about, I did get this clip here from the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, Professor Robert Quinn. You know, they have a executive MBA program that you can attend, but I want you to focus on that. Teams seeking extraordinary results through common language, supportive approaches. And then we have where I attended, I want to give a shout out to my undergrad alma mater, Morris Brown College, proud graduate of Morris Brown College, but also my grad program, I went to KSU. And that entire program, the executive MBA program at Kennesaw State University, is built around team building. It is also where I was introduced to the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So the class today is really based, or at least this webinar is loosely based on the experience of two completely different firefighters that worked with Cobb County Fire and Emergency Services. One was white from Paulding County, Georgia, and the other, me, Black from Detroit, Michigan. We had a lot of differences and worked in the same fire station. But after 30 years, we have a friendship that is enduring. And we've actually, as part of this webinar, you'll see it kind of what was the basis of our class. But also there are two great books recommended reading for you. The Crucial Conversations and the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. These are primarily the books that are this class is based on. I highly recommend you read these books. As a matter of fact, when we first saw the book, it was given to us by the Deputy Director of Human Resources, Cobb, Glenda Valentine. We thought they had stole our idea, but they didn't. And so we kind of changed the name to Courageous Conversation from Crucial Conversation. But let's look at a video of the 5 dysfunctions so you can see exactly how this is summarized into a team performing.
When it comes to creating a healthy organization, the first and most important discipline is the building of a cohesive leadership team at the top. And that entails the overcoming of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, which I'm going to review very quickly here. The first dysfunction of a team is the absence of trust. Trust is critical on a team. It's the foundation of teamwork. And what it requires is that people get vulnerable with one another, that they're very open about who they are, what they're good at, what they're not good at, if they've made a mistake. Without trust, we cannot build a team. Specifically because without trust, we can't overcome the second dysfunction, which is the fear of conflict. You see, conflict is not only okay on a team, or even good, it's necessary and required. We have to engage in conflict, and when we have trust, conflict becomes nothing but the passionate pursuit of truth or the best possible answer. Why is conflict so important? Because without it, we're going to encounter the third dysfunction of a team, which is the lack of commitment. Teams that don't engage in open, honest conflict don't really commit to the decisions they make. They're passive about it. Commitment is when everybody truly buys in because they've weighed in on a decision and they realize that's what they're all going to stick with. Now, why is commitment so important? Because without it, we're going to encounter the fourth and most common dysfunction of a team, which is the inability of people to hold each other accountable. Accountability is so important on a team. When people have committed, they're going to have more courage to actually confront one another about shortcomings in their behavior and their performance. And why is that accountability so important? Because if people aren't holding each other accountable, they're going to encounter the next and final dysfunction, which is the inattention to results. Now, you might say, well, what are people paying attention to if not results? Well, maybe it's not the collective results of the team they're interested in, but just their own individual results, their budget, their department, their staff. If we're going to focus on the collective results of the team, we have to trust one another, we have to engage in healthy conflict, we have to commit to decisions, hold one another accountable for those, and achieve true collective results. Those are the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Get my slide to advance.
When it comes to creating a healthy organization.
All right. Let's go back. So before I move on to this next slide, there are 3 key words that Patrick Lencioni mentioned in the 5 dysfunctions when you heard him talk about absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, inability to hold each other accountable, inattention to results. 3 key words I want you to make a note of: fear, courage, and collective results. None of these things that he talked about can happen without people having some pretty good conversations. The other book, as you hear on this slide, was Crucial Conversations. And then their definition of the book, we took the idea from them, so I won't say they. Ours is Courageous Conversation. Again, Glenda Valentine had bought this book to us, and she shared it. And the rest is just history. I mean, we took off once we got this book, and we looked at our personal relationships, and how we had grown together and became an effective team at the fire station. And this is kind of was the foundation of some thoughts that we had when a certain situation came. But I'll get into that later. But a conversation definition, crucial conversation definition by the book is where a conversation occurs between 2 or more people. Thoughts and opinions differ. Now, all you have to do is watch the news or check social media, and you can find a lot of thoughts and different opinions in our society today. Potential for strong emotions exists. People are pretty strong, especially emotionally, about their beliefs. But above all, reconciliation is warranted. That's what a crucial conversation is, and that's what our class or this webinar is really going to hone in on. That in order to be effective, people have to be united and work as a team. Before I jump right into some of the key points, I want to discuss with you what I consider some very core concepts that we'll be discussing today. Leadership. Now, there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of definitions of leadership. I'm going to kind of give you a spin on some that are my personal definitions. First, I want to say for today's webinar, leadership is pretty synonymous with the word leader or the leadership team. Many times we hold one individual responsible for the leadership of an organization, and that's just not realistic, effective, or really fair. Leadership is, in many cases, a group effort. It's especially at the top, the leadership team. Lencioni said in his pyramid, the leadership team is the one that must commit to rid the organization of those dysfunctions. I have a definition. Some can debate it, but I think I've measured this down to a real simple equation. Leadership is measured by one thing. Successful leadership, let me say, is measured by one thing: results. You can't write a book on leadership. Nobody wants to hear your lecture on leadership. No one wants to hear your story on leadership if you haven't demonstrated that your leadership has produced results. And so it is measured by one thing in my book, and that is results. I kind of derived this definition through experience and learning. Is the leader is the person or the leadership team or leadership is the folks that envision or know where we need to go. But they also empower the team to get where we need to go. Let's talk about another core concept, the workplace. I think my light went out for movement, pardon me. I hope you all can still see me. This thing is on a sensor. We're just, all right, good. I have to keep moving, I guess, in the webinar. I didn't think. The workplace is synonymous. We're talking about how to improve the workplace through courageous conversations. It's synonymous with the team or the organization. It's a place or an entity organized to produce results. Let's talk about another core concept that I want, and I'm going through these slides at a pretty decent pace because, again, this is typically a 4-hour class, and I want to get to a place where we can get to some meat and then make sure I allow enough time at the end for you all to have some questions. But fear, too many times fear is just glossed over. Everybody experiences fear, but you need to know how to manage it. Now, a leader doesn't need to be controlled by fear. Fear is a breeding ground for ignorance. If I'm afraid to know something about someone, I'm going to resist trying to learn something about them. It's also a basis for ineffective decision making. If I don't take the time to get past my fears and learn what I need to do to make better decisions, I'm going to make poor decisions because I don't have all of the information, especially if I don't know how to use the power of diversity, diverse views. I won't get that 360 view. Also, it paralyzes people and causes inaction. If you're afraid to move, the most safe thing to do is nothing. Now, let me tell you, doing nothing is never going to get results. Let's talk about courage. And courage is a breeding ground for education and growing. Our very concept, courageous conversations, was formed when we went to a seminar and they were talking about why do people not talk about the difficult subjects. And I remember in that class saying, because everybody wants to stay on the surface because it's safe there. We need to get below the surface and get courageous. Kind of coined our phrase with our team that day. We talked around it. But it does give you a breeding ground to learn, to get past some of your presumptions and biases. Be willing to admit some vulnerabilities about things you know or don't know. It also empowers effective decision-making because now you've learned and you've gathered and you've been able to make yourself, put yourself in a position where you can get all the information necessary from anybody on the team. And it enables us to move beyond our fears to do and take the necessary action to lead our organizations. This one here I stole from the Navy, and it's something we used to always say, you know, individuals produce personal achievements, but teams produce organizational results. Individuals, they can win awards. You've heard of some of the athletic association, MVP, scoring championships, number of touchdowns, number of first downs, whatever the sport, home runs, but only teams win championships. Ponder on that for a minute. The team is going to always outperform. I don't care how talented an individual is. You can't beat a team. Another core concept. This is one I kind of made up. It makes sense, and I hope it makes sense to you. It is called the value spectrum. Everyone has value, and everyone wants to be valued. So where'd you get that from? I remember watching the movie The Color Purple, and I will never forget in that movie, there was a line, and they were out in a flower field. And this particular lady, she was talking to another lady, and she says, everything wants to be loved. And she said, that is why God made the flower the color purple. And that clicked with me. It was made beautiful because it wanted attention. Well, if you translate that to humanity, we all are different and unique, but none of us want to be devalued. You know, dehumanized or devalued is the bottom of that spectrum, one end, and the other end is always to a person that's admired or highly appreciated. I'm going to ask you all a question I had in the webinar audience. Where do people in your organization fall on this spectrum? Now, this takes courage. I'm using that word a lot today. This takes courage to assess. Do your people feel valued? Do they feel included? Do they feel productive? Because if they are valued, they will be productive and they will be engaged and committed, and they become team members. If they're devalued or not made to feel like they are included or they're excluded, they become unproductive. I mean, why would I invest in somebody or something or some organization that doesn't care anything about me? Over time, you know, self-survival becomes a factor. Why would I be somewhere that devalues me? I'm going to find some place that values me. People who are devalued become isolated, uncommitted, and they become individuals. And sometimes these individuals can leave their own silos and cliques. And so if you wonder why in organizations, how some of these things are formed, sometimes you got to ask yourself the question, you know, does anyone kind of been left out or made to feel not a part of? Let's go on to another one of our core concepts today. And I put all these in this slide because I know that GMA and the Embrace webinar, they're going to share this PowerPoint with you all and a PDF. I want to go back and look at it. I kind of want you to get all the points in there. So I have word heavy slides, but it is for a purpose. I said earlier, leadership is measured by one thing, results. And results are a factor of one thing. And this is a key thing here. Like I said, the subject is as ancient as the Tower of Babel, as modern as some of the current EMBA programs like the one at KSU. And you ask yourself, why are we still talking about unity, communication, Babel to current day? That is because what separates those who achieve and get results are folks who change and then also take their change and learn and gain knowledge and information and put it into action. Lecturing people about courageous conversations, lecturing people about leadership will probably last as long as your lecture. But when you find a way to put it into action, that is what gets results. I used to love math when I was in high school. I was actually on the math team, equations team. And so I tend to put things in math formulas. And this is probably a little interesting to those who like math. R, results, is equal to leadership times intentional action. And if you know about math, you can flip that around. Leadership multiplied by intentional action equals results. That's a core concept. And again, what separates success from the unsuccessful, what are you doing? Not talking. What are you doing about it? To get results, this is some of the things you need to do. Take a bunch of diverse individuals and forge them into a cohesive team. It is pretty rare these days you find many teams that are just monolithic or just homogeneous, where it's just one type of mindset, one type of background, one type of experience. It's rare. I don't know if they even exist anymore. Most teams have people with different backgrounds, different mindsets, different cultures, the entire package. Bring that team together, forge them into a cohesive team. This is when you can convert, when you take the right action. Ideas and rhetoric, they get converted into palpable cultural change, changing of a culture. This is something we're doing out there in the city of Powder Springs right now. Myself and the city manager and the other executive director, Eric Meyer, constantly, continuously talk about how we can improve our culture. And that is started with some conversations at the leadership level. Goals and objectives are materialized into tangible results. When you want to get these results, you have to take that type of action. So in order to get these results, this is what you got to do. Leadership has to be committed. A commitment, focused action. You have to create a healthy and empowering workplace environment. And these are both forged by navigating the difficult conversations. You know, avoiding stuff about work performance, attitudes, why people don't collaborate. Avoiding these conversations, that stuff just doesn't work. Now, I've talked about these concepts and kind of gotten to this point. I actually want to show you an illustration of what we did in our organization and how it brought about results. Moving on down our plan, now we're at the illustration. We're getting ready to get down to the blueprint. I think I'm moving at a pretty good pace. Very good. So my experience, as you've seen earlier, was through the Navy and the fire service, and of course, in management positions with local government. But there's a saying in the Navy, in the Navy, you're forged by the sea. And in the fire service, I'm going to say you're forged by fire. There are many lessons learned in these industries. Both the fire and the sea have no favorites. They're both indiscriminate. They're very unforgiving. And when you address or you try to operate in those environments, your goals have to be crystal clear. Because there are obstacles that could just disrupt whatever plan or goal you have. And so in these environments, one thing that I learned is that teamwork is mission critical. Again, individuals win awards, maybe trophies, but only championships come from teams. Teamwork. And so through all this, I've learned a lot, and I'm willing to share that with anyone. And I put it to practice in my career and a lot of our teammates. Of course, I don't stand here alone. The folks that I work with, Courageous Conversation team, the team at City of Powder Springs, any team that I've been associated with, I'll use those ideas and share them, and you see results. It becomes contagious. So let's get into it. What happened? In about 1980, something unique happened at the Cobb County Fire and Emergency Services. We were fortunate to have one of the first women to lead a metro-size, that's a department with over a citizenship with over 500,000 or 700,000 citizens. We were fortunate to have one or two of the first women chiefs to lead a metro-sized department in the country. Her name was Rebecca Denlinger. She's, I got my cursor there. That's her sitting in the center of that picture. We had all retired. And she got to a place where she was ready to move on. She became a labor director up in Canada. And so her successor, the guy that I started out with, the white firefighter from Paulding County, Sam Heaton, that's him. And so Sam became the successor. And there was this palpable fear that went through our department. Becky had started us on a culture of inclusion and diversity, and people felt valued regardless of their background. Cobb County had a history at the time of being a good old boy system, primarily white male. And when she left, people thought, oh boy, Sam, white male, he's in charge. We're going backwards. And I think it kind of provoked our fire chief, Sam Heaton, that he was going to double down. So he gave me and the deputy chief, Randy Crowder, the guy there in the arrow point to, and that's, of course, that handsome guy is me. He gave us a directive. And he said that he wanted us to go find a diversity class that was something we can have taught in a practical manner. He didn't want any more check the box harassment and discrimination class where people just go through and check the box, answer the questions, and they move on that once a year training. He wanted something that became a part of our culture. So he sent us out. We found at Atlanta Fire and Rescue Department, we attended this Atlanta Fire Rescue Department seminar called 2020. And you can see at the bottom there, it was about leadership, labor, and crafting a vision and an action plan. There's that word again, action. Again, I don't want to sound too confident, but that handsome, muscular guy right there, that's me. That's, of course, our Deputy Chief, Randy Crowder, who's currently Public Safety Director of Cobb County, and Glenda Valentine's the Deputy Director of HR. And we, with a few of our other HR representatives, worked and put together this program. And we came back, and that is where we started the Courageous Conversation. Let's talk about the class that came out of that. This class, again, is typically taught in 4-hour segments. We've done it in conferences in 90 minutes, but I've never done it in a 35-minute webinar. So for the sake in this forum, I cannot do what will not do a class, but I'm going to talk about the class highlights. In the class, we brought in everyone from our department and went through this class. That's sworn, non-sworn, and we talked about definitions, what diversity means in its many forms. You know, most times people think black and white, male and female, Latino, but we went all the way into from the north, from the south, A shift, B shift, politics, Democrat, Republican. I mean, people, some people believe in blue, some people believe in red. I mean, people have different backgrounds, they're raised differently. Emphasize how broad diversity could be in its many forms. Also talked about team unity. As a matter of fact, we had started reading this book called It's Your Ship. And at the time, the department wasn't too receptive to what Chief Heaton wanted to do. We changed our values. And we said, why are we talking about diversity? Let's talk about unity. And he said, nope, we're not going to water it down. So we compromised and we came up with unity through diversity. And so team unity, we talk about in our classes, current and relevant events. We actually talk about what happens in our department. We want to be proactive instead of reactive for issues around discrimination and harassment. I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly again, just to tell you what we talked about in these classes and our class to our department. We talked about how to listen, perceptions, biases, assumptions, the power of forgiveness. And we really hone in on that word, empathy and respect. We taught how you should respect others for their values and thoughts and ideas. Doesn't mean you have to agree, but it does mean that without respect, you cannot have what we were defining, a framework of a courageous conversation. Now, I will say that these classes were taught by our leadership. We didn't just go find some outside instructors. We taught these classes ourselves. We established a safe place. You know, you got to make sure that folks understand that they're not going to be criticized or harassed in these classes. And so we established what we call ground rules. I don't have them all here, but in the class we taught it around the country. We tell people, it's not a free pass. Say what's on your mind. We want to hear what you think and what you're thinking and why you see something differently. And we're not going to criticize you that, but it's not a free pass to harass or discriminate. There's no such thing as being irresponsible words or comments. You will be held responsible in our classes if you say something that's irresponsible. But we stress very importantly, if you have a question to somebody and your intent is to learn, not to harm, that's a safe space. I wish I had time to tell some of the stories that we've had, but you know, we somebody, hey, someone to know why do Black people seem to have funerals 3 weeks after people are died? And we said, what do you mean by that? And why do y'all bury them so quickly? But the intent then was to learn, and that started a conversation that, oh my gosh, it carried on for a while. Also, this here was in our class, and let me tell you, it is a game changer. If you do nothing else from this webinar, I strongly recommend you go find on the internet the Blue Eyes, the Brown Eyes exercise by Miss Jane Elliott. I didn't know that she had a book. Found this out doing my research for the class. And this is the book, The Collar on Pocket. This class is a game changer. We play this video. It's about 13 minutes long in our class. And it really drives home the key points of the class. And the video, I mean, we've played this thing and showed it in so many different places now. But it's rarely that we don't get visceral responses after this video. I mean, sometimes we have to take a break after the video. There's typically sometimes tears. People show anger, especially to those who had never seen it, the first timers. It was written, I think, produced in 1968. Until this day, it is still relevant. And then we follow that video with class discussion on our core concepts. Now, how do we make it pertinent to our audience? And I'm telling you what we did, the action that we took at our department, Cobb County Fire and Emergency Department at the time. We created these vignettes. Chief Jody Gableman, she actually organized it, her with Chris Stone, they produced them. And we let our folks see themselves in certain situations. This became very engaging. And we, in those videos, we don't just leave, we talk about religion, we get into people's sizes and shapes. And you would think that's uncomfortable, but we create a space. And I'm telling you, the class comes alive. As a matter of fact, I'm going to try to show you a part of one of the vignettes that we show. Let's see if we can get it going. All right, I think we're going to get it
going. And in related news, DeKalb County Police are searching for the suspect who robbed the Drunk Skunk liquor store. The suspect is believed to be a black male, approximately 20 years of age, wearing saggy pants and a black hoodie.
DeKalb County,
He was
black man. Imagine that.
What you mean by that? All black folks don't commit crimes.
What would possess you to say something like that?
What?
Now, that is, oh, I got to move again. Excuse me, webinar audience. My light keeps cutting off, I guess. This thing. Oh, boy. I hope you all can see me. All right, good. We have like 6 of those vignettes that we play. And we, after the vignettes, we have breakouts. The groups break out and they go and they discuss. We ask these questions. We have them discuss these questions and they present what issues might arise from the actions in the video. How might you handle the situation and how this may be prevented? And just to give you a cheat sheet, by the end of the class, people are saying, you know, that may require a courageous conversation. And that became a buzzword. And I'm telling you now, it sticks throughout all the organizations that we've been associated with. What are the results of our class? I was talking about leadership is measured by results. How do I know it was effective? Let me just tell you this. In Cobb County Fire and Emergency Service, we went from #1 in EEOC complaints to the model agency for all the county. Our fire chiefs at the time, Sam Heaton, he went from a personnel investigator to a personnel empowerer. Well, what I mean by that, he spent a great deal of his time investigating complaints between employees and having to submit that to HR to be investigated by EEOC. We quickly, I won't say quickly, it took some time. It wasn't overnight, but it happened. We became #1 in the county, 0 unfounded complaints. Our workplace improved, our training improved, our performance improved. We birthed 2 national conferences out of this era. We produced several national instructors that teach on the national stage from this time. I mean, in every area. We hit a rare credential of the top 3% departments nationwide. And the thing I'm most proud of is that we had somebody receive the Ray Downey Award. Now, the Ray Downey Award is really typically given to somebody from Fire Department New York, LA Fire Department, Chicago, all the big departments around the country. You wouldn't think Cobb County would be in line for it, but yes, one of our guys won the Ray Downey Award. That award is considered the most prestigious award in American fire service. It consists of a Courage and a Valor Medal, and the recipient gets a $35,000 check. So, I mean, that's some results, improved workplace. On the right, you see a picture, what I'll call another result, a high-performing team, the conference, the Metro Atlanta Firefighters Conference. And then I'm going to take a side road here for a minute. I worked at a part-time at a place called City of Roswell Fire Department, and a good friend of mine, Michael Hatcher, and a couple of us, we would have many courageous conversations at the station. This Roswell had a system where fire departments, firefighters from all over the metro area, different DeKalb, Atlanta, Gwinnett, would come together. And you can imagine the diversity there. We had different ideas. But through courageous conversations, we came up with a concept. And we're just going to pull all the metro departments together, produce this conference, Metro Atlanta Firefighters Conference, to save our firefighters money, put this on. The conference gave training for little to no money. And we did it. And that conference is still today. And also another conference, an EMS conference, was born out of the same thing. This is the result of a workplace that's been affected by courageous conversations. Let's talk about what has happened to our project, the Courageous Conversation, since many of us have retired and moved on, but we still teach it. I mean, we're teaching next week in Raleigh, myself and Sam Heaton. It has evolved. Under Chief Kreider, we expanded. We went outside the fire service. We taught it to other departments, DOT, Fleet. We taught it to some of our executive groups. And I was very proud that right around the George Floyd time, the discussion, this is during when the pandemic had just started to subside, I believe. Sam had approached me and said, hey, let's bring together some folks to talk about this subject. We're going to facilitate a courageous conversation. Myself, Randy Kreider, Donnell Campbell, and Sam Heaton. We pulled in members from the Black community and members from law enforcement, and we talked about the George Floyd. And let me tell you this. When this facilitated courageous conversation was done, of course, there were tears. And I had a gentleman walk up to me and say, y'all should have recorded that and showed it to the nation. It was just that impactful. So our concept has evolved to facilitate group discussions, of course, to classes. And congratulations to you all, webinar audience. It is now in the form of a webinar, not the full class, but this is the first time I believe we've done it in a webinar format. Let's talk about how the movement continues. Currently, as you know, I'm currently working with the city of Powder Springs, and our city is a model for diversity. It's diversely evolving. We have a saying, inspired by the past, invigorated by the present, and innovative about our future. But that city has been intentional in their actions in developing the city and making it a welcome place for all in the workforce and in our city. I say personally, thanks to our city manager, Pam Connor, she brought me on board with the city of Powder Springs. And I remember coming there and I was speaking with our police chief, Lane Catwell, and talking to a few police officers. They had introduced me and I said, you know, we're going to the championship. And I'm quite sure they were saying, what is this man talking about? But I had that mindset in the back of my mind because we went to an award ceremony when I got there and none of our police officers had received an award. Well, I'm proud to say courageous conversations occur in the city of Powder Springs. I've seen improvement in our workspace. I believe our city manager would say the same thing. And we have one of our championships. On the right, one of our recently promoted captains, Jason Holcomb, won the Medal of Valor to the public safety. That was countywide. This thing works, you all. If you create a culture and an environment where people can share diverse ideas, you're going to have an improved workplace. How can you do it? Let's get to the blueprint. Got to decide if this program will benefit your organization. You must understand the role of leadership is critical. Leaders don't buy in, nobody else will. You can customize the material for your organization. You don't have to do it the way we did it. We'd be glad to share our ideas with you and even come out and help you get a program going. But develop a class around core concepts. Make sure you have credible presenters. And the key thing is, don't just lecture. Make sure they get a chance to practice what you've taught. You can use our model if you want. The information on these subjects of team building, unity, and diversity are limitless. But above all, you need to be proactive and intentional. And accept this. You're not going to change it overnight. If you stick with it, though, you will get the results. In closing, I'm getting close here. I'm actually good on time. I want to talk about how I typically, in one of these classes, when we taught our fire recruits, I used to close the class about this story. Miracles on Ice. I don't know if you know about Miracles on Ice, but I'll give you a little backstory. Herb Brooks was the coach. It was an ice hockey game in the 1980 Winter Olympics played in Lake Placid, New York. It was played between the United States and the Soviet Union. Now, let me just say this. The Soviet Union was a 4-time defending gold medalist and heavily favored to just crush our United States team. And they were known, you couldn't beat them because they were professional hockey players. But the U.S. teams were primarily college amateur players that Herb Brooks had brought together. Herb, interesting character. He, doing practices, they would practice, and he would just kind of set these guys up, and he would ask them, hey, where are you from? Who'd you play with? And one of the guys would say, hey, I'm from Massachusetts. I played for this hockey team. I played for University of Minnesota. And they keep practicing. He'll say, hey, where are you from? University of Michigan, played for the Wolverines hockey team. He's all right, and they kept saying they were from, these colleges, and they played for these teams. Well, let me show you the video of what he did to this team.
Get a whistle.
Hold up. Gotta get back on the ice. Let's go.
What for?
We'll find out soon enough. Let's go back on the ice. Come on, boys.
What for?
We'll find out in a minute, won't we? Let's go. Come on.
Come on, guys. Let's go see what he wants. You guys don't want to work during the game? No problem. We'll work now. Go on. That one. You can win on talent alone? Gentlemen, you don't have enough talent to win on talent alone. Again. You better think about something else. Each and every one of you. When you pull on that jersey, you represent yourself and your teammates. And the name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. Get that through your head. Again. Everybody get on that line. Hey. Again. Again. Perfect. Come on, Craig, blow the whistle. Again. Michael Ruzioni! Winthrop, Massachusetts! Who do you play for? Play for the United States of America. That's all, gentlemen.
I still get chills when I see that video. So we're getting ready to conclude there, but I want you to know that that team went on in 1980 and they upset the Soviet Union and won that game 4-3 when nobody believed they can do it. They became together as a team. The name on the front is more important than the name on the back. And you build a unified team through pushing them together, forcing them together through courageous conversations, you're going to get results and you're going to get a high-performing organization. And I want to say that leadership must create the environment for the team to develop from a bunch of individuals to a cohesive and high-performing team. And that result can only come from intentional focused action embraced by leadership and empowered through the team. That's the end of my conclusion. As Herb said, that's it. Practice is over. My contact information is here. If you don't get it, I'm gonna close out. I think I'm right at 47 minutes again. Mr. Freddie Broom knows how to get in touch with me. And at this time, I'll entertain questions, and I imagine I should stop sharing my screen. Thank you all for this opportunity to present.
All right. Thank you. Great presentation. Do we have any questions? You can put them in the chat box or you can do the Q&A. Have any questions? Any questions? Someone wants to know, how can I get a copy of the book? Which book? I'm assuming the five.
I don't know. It's two books we talked about. Yeah, Crucial Conversations and the 5 Dysfunctions. You can go online and order them out there. Cobb County Library System will help you. Or we have a bookstore in City Powder Springs called the Bookworm, but you can get these books anywhere.
Yeah, and I know Lowndes County Library probably has one too, Ms. Cody. Any more questions?
I see 7 in the chat. I may have nailed it. I hope I nailed it.
Yeah, most of them saying thank you. Well, I'll ask a question. I know that a lot of times when we're talking about the courageous conversations, and it's always the challenge of everyone's not at the same level. So how do you encourage someone to reach someone at a different level so you can get started with having that courageous conversation?
You know, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, we looked at in one of our vignettes talking about the courageous conversation between a subordinate and a boss. But to your point, maybe someone who is well-versed in cultural language or just cultural knowledge, cultural awareness, and someone who may not have even touched the subject. The thing to always start out with a courageous conversation is, one, the book helps create the safe space and make sure you understand the intent is to learn. Because if I don't know anything about Freddie and I want to learn, I'm going to ask you a question that may make me sound stupid. You know, I may say, Freddie, why do you like this? Or why do you listen to this? I'm not trying to insult you. I want to learn. So we create first a safe space and make sure people understand your intent must be to learn, not to ridicule, not to make fun of, or not to pick. And also respect. Respect is key. Be willing to put yourself in the other person's shoes. That is really emphasized in that video, Brown Eyes, Blue Eyes. If I'm gonna talk with Freddie and I wanna know why he handles something a certain way, I need to ask myself, how does Freddie see it? And I'm gonna ask you, how do you see it? You ask me, how do I see it? And that puts us on an equal playing ground and it eliminates that maybe you know more than I know about a subject.
Okay. It's kind of like one of the things that I talk about. I tell everyone to remember what the Q-tip means, QTIP. I give Q-tips out, not to tell you to clean out your ears, but you can't take it out personal. So QTIP is quit taking it personal. So I guess that will be one of the steps as well. Just don't take it as personal and have a little empathy.
Absolutely. If I'm intending to make fun of you, that's not a courageous conversation. One time we started, I'll give an anecdote. We taught a class and I brought up a very tough subject, Freddie. I asked how many of my beautiful white sisters would want to ask my beautiful black sister about how they do their hair. Now, the room got silent. But once they started, I said, but if your intent is because you really admire their hairstyle or why, and you've always wanted to ask because there's different hairstyles, different cultures, then have that conversation. When I'm telling you, we had to stop that conversation once they got started to continue the class. So yeah, you're right. Don't take it personal, but I'm trying to learn. I may be ignorant. We have to admit sometimes we are ignorant of each other's backgrounds and perspectives. And instead of creating a false narrative about why you do something, why don't I ask you?
I got a question. What can the elected leadership do to help? So
wow, that's a tough one. I can tell you now, we go to Washington, D.C., they need this class more than anybody. I mean, great question, and I'll say this. This concept for elected, I'm proud of Powder Springs. I don't even know which one of their political parties each one of our council members, because they don't talk Democrat or Republican, they talk Powder Springs. But when you watch the video, Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes, they talk about collars. You are a human being. We talk about Republicans and Democrats, but guess what? We are all Americans. China's watching us as a country, and here we are trying to be divided. So the elected officials, I know they have to make alliances with their parties, but always think about your constituents. Think about what pulls us together instead of what separates us. And practice this. I mean, get this class and practice it and learn to disagree in a respectful way.
Okay. While I'm reading this next question, can you hold up the books again?
Oh, okay. This is one book, Crucial Conversations. I don't have the other book with me. It is called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Great book. It's a quick read. It's actually written in fiction, so to speak, but it gets the story done.
Yeah. We'll add that to the link so that way everybody know which books you're talking about. I have another question. It's very important to be self-critical when having these conversations. How do you recommend these conversations start and end?
Excellent question. In our culture, guess how they started? I would approach you and say, hey, you know what? We need to have a courageous conversation. That sent a signal. I'm getting ready to enter into a safe space. I may be asked a question that someone felt uncomfortable asking, but their intent is to learn, and they're going to put themselves in my shoes, and I'm going to put myself in their shoes, and we're going to exchange information. Once you present the concept and allow people to practice, it becomes a part of the culture. I don't recommend anybody just go out and say, hey, I'm gonna have a crazy conversation without at least getting the concept down. This book probably details that more than anything on how to do that.
Okay, got another question for you. Should leaders create a timeline on when to see results from courageous conversations, or is it just a continuous practice?
Well, I love these questions. I know we're gonna run out of time. Time is a measurement of space and a sunset. It should not be a measurement of performance. This is a continuous improvement process. We started teaching this in 2010, I believe. We're still teaching this. There's still a need for this class. Jane Elliott's thing was done in 1968, Brown Eyes and Blue Eyes. It is still relevant. This country hasn't healed from a lot of issues that we have not had courageous conversations about. Don't set a timeline. Set a goal of improving your workplace.
All right. Chief Parker from Perry had a question. Should the courageous conversation be held privately or in a group?
Excellent question. We discussed that. Most times, if it's a one-on-one situation, that should be held privately. We have, as I demonstrated earlier, we facilitated a group courageous conversation. But if you do, you must have a facilitator. Because if it gets heated, a facilitator that is very familiar with the concepts can make sure that respect stays there and that people respect each other's boundaries and there's no harmful conversation. But if you feel well-versed in it and it's been taught and you're comfortable in it, and both you and the other party are individuals, you know what it means, the safe place, the intent to learn, the respect, then you can have it privately. So it can be done both ways.
Somebody said, can you come and facilitate?
Listen, we go around the country, we get calls all the time, and there's not enough of us to go around. But if you get in touch with Mr. Freddie Broom or contact me, this is something our team, the Courageous Conversation Team, we're very proud of. We share this as much as we can. Again, we're teaching in Oklahoma, North Carolina, we help. And if we're asked, that stuff can be arranged.
Any more questions? Got a few more minutes. Any more questions for Mr. Tank? Let's check. All right. Well, I don't think we have any more questions, so I'll allow you to do a wrap up if you want to with some final words.
If I will stress and emphasize anything, if you get a chance, if this really piqued your interest, of course, get in touch with us. We can elaborate on more. I think my contact, Freddie, you have it. They'll get it. But if you really want to dig into this subject, I strongly encourage to watch that video, The Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes Experience by Jane Elliott. I'm surprised how many people have not seen that. Then read the book, Crucial Conversations. Then read the book, Five Dysfunctions. I shared this with a guy, he's a leader in the city of Acworth. And I just told him about the two books. He emailed me about a week later. He said, man, I'm so glad you showed. He said, it has changed how I lead and how I deal with people. So it's just small steps. I mean, we can go elaborately, but I said, just be intentional. Nobody wants to be lectured. You can't just have a class and talk to your folks and tell them this is what we're going to do and leave it alone. You must give them a space to practice this. You must create an opportunity to discuss it among themselves. And that's how it becomes a part of a culture, by doing it, not just talking about it. The scenarios we do, the breakouts, go out on one of these. We're talking about the city of Powder Springs. I think we're talking about going to one of these escape rooms. And then we're going to come back and discuss the concepts. Practice, practice, practice. And with that, I'll close.
Okay. All right. Thank you for a great presentation. Please join me in giving Mr. Tanks a virtual round of applause for an awesome job. Thank you. Thank you for bringing this to GMA as well and allowing us to be part of our Embrace webinar. And we look forward to a continued partnership where maybe you can present some more things for us in the future.
Glad to. Thank you all.
Once again, this wraps up our Embrace webinar. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. I hope it was educational for you as it was for me, and we hope to see you again next month. Thank you, and everyone have a great day.